That afternoon in the first week of August 2025, the atmosphere at Gimpo Airport was noticeably calmer than usual. Yet a subtle movement from the private parking area of the VIP terminal began to draw attention from a few airport staff who were already accustomed to handling the comings and goings of major celebrities. A black car with tinted windows arrived without an entourage and without the large presence of agency staff that typically accompanies idol departures, and shortly after, BTS member SUGA stepped out wearing a simple yet neat all-black outfit, complete with a crossbody bag and a cap lowered slightly to cover part of his face. Despite the absence of special security or any of the other BTS members, a few internal security personnel, who seemed to have been briefed directly by HYB's management, kept their distance while discreetly observing his movements. There were no media cameras, no waiting fans, and no publicly announced agenda, making SUGA's presence at the airport appear like that of a regular traveler heading abroad for personal matters. After quickly passing through immigration, he proceeded to the International Departures Gate and boarded a commercial flight to Osaka, Japan, using a regular airline service with no signs of VIP reservation or exclusive arrangements for public figures. This understandably sparked speculation among industry insiders once word spread in fan communities, especially considering that trips involving high-profile idols like SUGA are usually part of group schedules or solo projects known to the public in advance. This time, however, there was no statement from HYBE, no posts from SUGA himself, and no media coordination, making the journey feel more personal than professional. Upon his arrival in Osaka a few hours later, his presence was again noticed by a few lounge visitors who recognized him but refrained from approaching, choosing instead to take distant photos without interfering. He continued his travel using a local chauffeur service that had likely been prearranged, with no luxury car in sight and no welcoming party at the airport. He carried only a small suitcase and the same crossbody bag that had remained slung across his shoulder. The journey reportedly took him to a small, modern-style inn located in the peaceful Tennoji area, far from the bustling Osaka city center, where other guests who realized his presence respected his privacy by not immediately posting about it online. SUGA's activities during his stay, as observed by a few guests and in staff, seemed to revolve around simple routines like walking to local cafes, reading books on the inn's terrace, and occasionally using his laptop in the shared lounge that offered high-speed internet and a quiet environment suitable for work or writing. Although no official confirmation came from his agency, the nature of the trip resembled a personal retreat or a quiet creative session, with no signs of scheduled performances, announced musical collaborations, or planned meetings with notable figures in Japan's entertainment industry. As such, this trip became one of those rare instances where a top-tier idol appeared to be living as a private individual in a foreign city. By the end of his third day, SUGA still hadn't engaged in any conspicuous activities that would draw large-scale attention, and the inn staff remained professionally discreet without leaking personal data or his exact location, indicating that everything had been arranged quietly and not for public consumption. His presence in Osaka felt more like a respected private moment in a calm setting rather than a curated highlight meant to generate buzz. And although whispers of his whereabouts slowly trickled into online fan forums, the narrative remained neutral and restrained, as the only visible story was that of an artist stepping back briefly from the whirlwind of the industry that had elevated his name. The following morning in Osaka, the pace of SUGA's day remained consistently low-key as he began with a short solo walk through a quiet residential street lined with small family-run bakeries and traditional storefronts that had long served the local community. His presence, though not disguised in any elaborate way, did not immediately register with the early risers around him, as his attire of loose neutral-colored clothing and a simple canvas tote bag suggested nothing more than an ordinary traveler passing through. He entered a neighborhood coffee shop where he spent nearly an hour seated by the window, slowly sipping a hot drink while flipping through what looked like printed notes and handwritten sheets, some of which he occasionally tucked into a well-worn notebook. According to other patrons who recognized him only after a closer look, he spent most of the time looking outside or scanning his notes, without headphones, music, or any attempt to interact. The staff at the coffee shop maintained their professional demeanor, and no one approached him throughout the morning, allowing the moment to pass without interruption. By late morning, SUGA returned to the inn, where he was seen by a few other guests taking a short call in the garden area, speaking softly with an earbud in place while pacing back and forth near the bamboo fencing that lined the property. Later in the day, he requested the use of one of the inn's semi-private workrooms that overlooked a quiet courtyard, where he remained until evening, with only one break taken during mid-afternoon to retrieve something from a nearby convenience store. It became apparent to several staff members that SUGA was not there for leisure or sightseeing, but rather for a focused period of creative work, most likely related to songwriting or project planning. There were no deliveries, no business visitors, and no apparent security detail beyond what had already been quietly coordinated in advance. During the early evening, he accepted a simple meal prepared by the inn's kitchen, which he ate alone in the dining room, and he reportedly left a polite note of appreciation before returning to his room. Unlike many celebrity visits that often involve layers of logistical preparation and brand partnerships, this trip lacked any visible markers of commercial activity, and this unembellished reality began to circulate subtly among some fan pages that monitored idol movements without sensationalizing them. The tone remained respectful, and discussions about his trip focused more on the rare sight of a high-profile artist taking time for solitude rather than speculating about hidden motives. By the third night, SUGA's rhythm in Osaka had become a quiet routine of brief walks, extended working sessions, and minimal social engagement. That evening, he visited a small independent bookstore located about 10 minutes away from his accommodation, which specializes in music history, travel essays, and cultural theory. A few customers present at the time later shared anonymously that SUGA appeared relaxed and thoughtful, spending over an hour browsing through shelves before purchasing 2 books and leaving with a polite nod to the cashier. There was no fan commotion, no cameras, and no outside observers waiting for him when he stepped out into the night. The absence of public spectacle around his presence highlighted the understated nature of the visit and reinforced the impression that this was a personal period of grounding, rather than a professional tour or strategic public appearance. The consistent simplicity of his days in Osaka made it increasingly difficult for online narratives to build momentum around any theory beyond what was visibly happening. An artist carving out space for privacy, self-direction, and possibly internal recalibration. As the night settled over the quiet neighborhood and lights dimmed across the inn, the staff noted no unusual requests or changes in routine. SUGA's door remained closed, and the atmosphere returned to its regular calm, punctuated only by the distant sound of trains and the occasional footsteps of other guests.